Hi, I'm Nicole Peters. I'm going to be talking to you today about my action research project, the effect of peer conversations on students' motivation to silent read. The purpose of this study is to find ways that motivate students to silent read, that make them want to silent read and pay more attention and stay focused during the silent reading process. We're hoping that by having them engage in peer conversations, they'll be more motivated to focus and read during that time. The problem is that during silent reading time, many students are not focused on reading. There's a lot of off-task behaviors going on throughout that time period, and students aren't really attaining to the books they're reading. The research questions we're looking at are, what is the effect of peer book talk time on students' desire to read? So seeing if this would affect how much students want to read. What is the effect of peer book time on students' behavior during silent sustained reading time? And we're looking at different types of off-task behaviors that often occur and seeing if this curbs those off-task behaviors. What is the effect of peer book talk time on students' enjoyment of silent reading time? So how much students are excited to read, how much they're excited to have that silent reading time in their classroom. What is the effect of peer book talk time on whether or not students are taking home their books? So we want to see if what we're doing in the classroom helps them to want to bring what they're doing home with them and gives them that desire to bring the books home and do more with them outside of the classroom. And the last question is, what is the effect of peer book talk time on students choosing to silent read as a choice activity? So oftentimes in the classroom, students have a choice of what they do as an all-done activity or finish up time, and we're seeing that very often silent reading is not their number one choice. So we want to see if having this peer book time can help them to make that choice on their own. For my review of literature, I looked at 4 different main topics that were concerned throughout this project. So the first is silent reading programs. The second is talking about books. Third is motivation to read. And the last is developing a love of reading. Silent reading programs are something that we know are commonly used throughout the United States and throughout the world. Teachers all over decide that silent reading should be a part of their classroom environment, and we've seen that it has positive effects on students. We think that it provides time for students to have self-selected books and to really engage in a non-structured reading time and build that love for reading and that enjoyment of reading that they might not necessarily get in structured in-class reading time. Research on the effects of silent reading on fluency and comprehension is inconclusive. Some studies show that it helps both of those areas, some studies show that it hasn't. And finally, positive effects on student attitude and reading have been shown after classes engage in silent sustained reading time. Talking about books is another big part of this study. We know that humans are social animals. It's human nature to want to talk about things that are important to us and things that interest us. So it's natural for students to want to talk about the books that they're reading. We also know that talking about books creates a more valuable experience for students. Students engage in read-alouds and talk-alouds with teachers in the classroom that help build that reading experience. They also have literature circles, which tend to help students go to a deeper level of thinking and a deeper understanding of what they're reading. We also know that as adults, thousands of adults across the country and throughout the world engage in book clubs, because this is a time for not only them to process what they're reading and to more greatly enjoy what they're reading, but also to have social interactions with other people. Talking about books can also help students process what they're reading. It gives them a chance to think more deeply about what they've read and make those connections to themselves. We also know that if students are talking about their books, they're probably sharing ideas about what good books are and what books maybe they didn't like. This can help students make better choices about finding that just right book. Next, we're looking at motivation. A big part of this study is looking at students' motivation to read and how that affects their behavior in the classroom. So we're hoping if students are more motivated to read during silent reading time, then their behaviors will reflect that they'll be more focused and more attaining to the book that they're reading. We think that Having books of interest will encourage reading in the classroom. So giving them that choice to choose a book that they want to read that's not chosen for them will help them to be motivated to read. We also think that social interaction, that peer talking time, is going to be a big motivator for kids. Kids want to have time to talk in the classroom. So if we're saying that they get that time to have an interaction with their peers after reading, they might be more inclined to focus and read during silent reading time. Also, other students will hold their peers accountable. If you haven't read during silent reading and you have to go to a conversation with someone else and you have nothing to talk about, that might not look very good to your peers. Students also want to impress their peers. They want to have something good to talk about and something good to bring to the conversation. So they'll be more apt to read during that time so they can engage in those conversations. Finally, we're looking at a love of reading. Many studies have looked for the characteristics of readers, which are students who have a love of reading, read for pleasure, and will be lifelong readers. Some of the biggest traits of these students are students that have a desire to talk about their books. These are the kids that go home and tell their parents about what they read in class. These are the kids who walk up to teachers out on the playground during recess and tell them all about the story they read over the weekend. So if we can bring that attitude of wanting to talk about books and share about books to our kids, they'll be more inclined to bring that home with them and they'll be building that love of reading. We also have the ability to choose a just right book, meaning a book that is at an appropriate level for them and interests them. Again, book conversations with peers can help them weed through the many, many books that schools have to offer to help them decide which book is a good book for them. The classroom that we'll be studying is a 4th grade class. There are 28 students, and it's in San Diego County Elementary School, and it is in...
Jennifer Hill, could you please come to the front office?